Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, January the 30th. This month of January is going by way too fast. But here we are, January the 30th, and welcome to our commentary. Well, I just want to say a couple of things. This air crash in Washington, D.C. last night, it's absolutely devastating. And I don't want to get into whose fault it is. I mean, it's completely worthless at this point to get into that. But I've been in that airport a few times. It's a very busy airport. Lots of people flying into the nation's capital and so on. So it's an extremely busy airport. And that's not the only airport in the country that is very busy. But I was really surprised when I saw the video of the helicopter um, crashing into the plane. And I'm just, I guess, like a lot of you, we're just sitting here saying, what in the world is a helicopter doing there? And so they need to take a look at that, take a good look at that, and maybe make some adjustments. But that is just absolutely incredible. If you watch that video, everything is normal, and all of a sudden you have an explosion. I mean, it's just absolutely horrible. I just don't know how to say it. So, my prayers and my thoughts to the families. Apparently, there were a bunch of people from the U.S. skating team that were in that flight, and just absolutely horrible. I don't know what else to say about it. So, our prayers with the family, and I hope they do get to the bottom of it. What is a helicopter doing flying anywhere near a runway? I don't know. That's I'll let the technical people deal with that, but it's not good at all. Let me say a couple of things about these hearings going on in the White House. In Congress, you had Robert Kennedy yesterday and today. You had Kash Patel today with Tulsi Gabbard. Look, these hearings are a waste of time. I honestly, I don't know how else to say it. I went into it a little bit yesterday in the commentary. They're just a waste of time, and they're a waste of time because they've turned into political speeches where a senator, they only give him 5 minutes. So he basically gives a speech for 5 minutes, and then he throws this "got you" question at the guest, and then the guest doesn't even have time to answer. Not the guest, but I mean the person under consideration, whether it's Kennedy or whatever. There's no time for a conversation. And I think what they ought to do, frankly, is do away with these hearings or change the format and have the committee select 2 or 3 members of the Senate and have those 3 members of the Senate ask the questions so that you can actually have more of a back and forth between the nominee and the person asking the question. But what we saw today, and I saw bits and pieces of it, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just political attacks. That's all that it was. And then so this side, the Democrats are attacking him. The Republicans are defending him. And, whatever you think of Kash Patel, whatever you think of the senators, it's a waste of time. We're not learning anything. I certainly didn't learn anything by these attacks on Kash Patel or Robert Kennedy or Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, I didn't learn anything from it. All I learned is that there's a bunch of senators who want their 5 minutes speech so they can load it up, I guess, on Twitter or whatever they put it and share it with their constituents. Beyond that, I really didn't see anything that let me know better why this person is not qualified or not. Now, my feeling has always been, I don't care who the president is, I felt the same way with Biden, with Obama, with Clinton, with Carter, whoever the president is. The president should have the opportunity or the right to put his team together. And that team should be confirmed by the Senate as soon as possible so that we have a working administration. Right now, we don't. So that we have a working administration, so that we have a cabinet, so we can have a cabinet meeting. And these departments are run by people appointed by the president, not what it is now, where you've got the second or the third or the fourth person in charge as some kind of an interim head of the department. That's not the way to do it. And I think that they could be confirmed very quickly. There's no reason for all of this time. And basically what you do is whatever documents they fill out, and then ask them a few questions, but it shouldn't turn into a political debate, which is what a lot of this stuff is turning into. So I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed with the process, and it's just a waste. It's a waste of time, and I'm disappointed with the process. Give the man his cabinet, unless there's some very obvious problem, but that usually comes out during the paperwork. And very often, if there's a really bad problem, the person never even gets nominated or drops out, as we saw with Gates for Attorney General. So we need to get serious about this process, and not everything is political. Not everything has to be a political rubber match here between one side or the other. I mean, just give the president his cabinet, and we'll have plenty of time to judge whether or not the appointment was the right appointment or not. Now, let me tell you something else too. And that is that one of the most amazing things is to hear some of these Democrats asking the nominees if they're going to take their orders from President Trump or whether they're going to be independent. Well, I don't know what planet these Democrats are living in, because a member of a cabinet, if you're the Secretary of War, or Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of State, of course you're going to take your orders from President Trump. He's the president. And if he tells you to do something, you're going to do it. Now, if you disagree with it, you can resign. And that happened, for those of you who remember the Carter administration, when President Carter ordered that rescue mission back in 1980. The mission failed, as you may remember. But the man who was Secretary of State at the time, Cyrus Vance, he said, I don't agree with this. And he resigned. He resigned from the cabinet. Well, that's the way it should be. If you don't agree with what the president is telling you to do, then you resign from the cabinet. But the idea that somehow, this is the first time in history that you're going to have cabinet members or department heads, taking orders from the president. They've always done that. I mean, what a shock. From George Washington to now, they've always done that. The cabinet works for the president. The cabinet secretary works for the president. And he implements the president's ideas or president's policies. So the whole process, I think, has gone haywire. It's been derailed by excessive partisan politics. And I think both sides need to have a meeting and put this thing back on track, because it's not helping anybody. What we're watching is not helping anybody. I've got a post over at the American Thinker today. You can check it out. It's on the right-hand side of the American Thinker. And I'm making reference to memories of when I was a kid in Cuba. Back then, I'm talking about the early 60s now, we had, there were all kinds of fears in Cuba that the United States was going to invade Cuba and all that kind of stuff. So Castro would have all these soldiers with anti-aircraft weapons on El Malecón, which is the avenue there at Havana Bay. And you could drive around and see all these anti-aircraft guns. And I remember we used to play baseball. There was like a sandlot field not far from the water. And a bunch of us would play baseball on this field. And we used to hit a fly ball. And, sometimes a fly ball would go not too far from where the anti-aircraft weapons were. But anyway, now I guess the current government in Cuba is so blown away by President Trump cutting back some of the relations, and by Secretary Rubio and some of the things that he's saying, that they've decided to have military parades again, to show the world that they are ready for the American invasion. And having read about this, it really reminded me of those early days when many Cuban people really thought the country was going to be invaded by the United States and so on. Of course, I don't think they believe that now, because I think the regime is so corrupt and out of touch with reality that I think Cubans are more worried about their day-to-day existence than worried about being invaded by the United States. But I have a post over at the American Thinker about this, and basically, it seems like President Trump is going to enforce the embargo, which is a good thing, and Secretary Rubio is going to stop all these remittances going to Cuba, and these remittances are basically keeping, or a big part of keeping, the regime alive, as well as some of the money coming in from tourists. So it's time to shut down Cuba, and force the Cuban government to reform, or face the consequences of not reforming. I mean, it's that simple. I have a post coming out Friday, and I'll get into it more tomorrow. But I have a post coming out Friday. You may have heard a new report that came out about American kids, and the kids are failing. The public school system is failing our students badly. Kids are graduating, can't even read and write at certain levels. And so the whole education system is failing. And this is an interesting conversation that we need to have in the country, as I'll mention in my post. We're talking about doing away with the Department of Education, and it has a $90 billion budget. And what are we getting for this? Well, the schools are failing. More and more parents are taking their kids out. 11% of the parents are now homeschooling. Here in Texas, I think we're going to have vouchers sometime this year, which means more parents will choose to take their kids out of public schools. Public schools are failing. And we're failing the kids. It's not a political debate. We're failing the kids. The kids are the ones who are suffering. Not a political debate, Democrat, Republican. It's not that we hate teachers. That's not what this is about. What we hate are the results that we're getting from public education, where we have so many kids who can't read and write at the level they graduate. And that's not good for the country. That is very bad for the country, because we're condemning these kids to low paying jobs. You know, you got to be pretty skillful these days if you want to compete in the world economy, because you're competing in a high-tech world. And we're not graduating kids who can do that. And that is a real shame, the real shame of the education system in the United States. And I think the teachers union and the education department need to apologize to the parents and say, we have failed you. We have failed you. And let the parents do whatever they want to do with their kids. If they want to keep them in public schools, go right ahead. But if you want to get them out, they should have that option too. My guess is that a lot of parents are going to take them out. They're already doing so. I mean, I know people who work literally where the wife is working so that the kids can go to Catholic schools. I know many, many parents who are, homeschooling their kids because they want to get them out. They want to make sure their kids have a shot. And the only way you're going to get a shot at a good job these days is if you graduate, you learn how to read and write and graduate from school. Okay, not necessarily go to college. You don't need that. You can go to a technical school. That's okay too. But you got to be able to read and write. And if we're graduating kids who cannot read and write, that is not the way to go. Government-run schools, like this comment that I just saw from Michael, government-run schools are simply not working. They're not working. This is not political. They're simply not working. Let me wish a happy number 82. Let me close with this. I want to wish a happy number 82 to Davey Johnson. Davey Johnson was the manager of the 1986 Mets, who won the World Series. But he was also one of my heroes when I was a kid back then collecting baseball cards. He was the second baseman for the Baltimore Orioles when the Orioles went to the World Series 4 times in 6 years back in late 60s, early 70s. And he was a really favorite of mine. He used to play second base, hit some home runs too. Pretty good power for a second baseman. So he's 82 today. So happy birthday to Davey Johnson. I don't know exactly where he's at these days. And he was managing the Mets, obviously, years ago. He's retired since. But what a great player. He was a real favorite of mine with the Orioles back then. Thank you for listening. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for tuning in. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.